South China Morning Post, 14th of February 2023, everyday commerce between China and Australia may soon resume, but what obstacles remain? After all Chinese-initiated trade hurdles are removed, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's projected trip to Beijing later this year is anticipated to show a complete resume between the two nations, according to two persons with direct knowledge of the matter. To that end, removing trade barriers is the goal of Australian Trade Minister Farrell's newly planned trip to Beijing, which will take place shortly. Wang is China's Minister of Trade. After the February 6 virtual meeting, he accepted Wang Wentao's request to continue the constructive dialogue. According to the sources who requested anonymity, there is currently no travel schedule. Still, the Prime Minister intends to go to Beijing and meet with his Chinese counterparts to demonstrate that China and Australia have resumed their normal relationship. Although one of the sources claimed that the foreign ministries of the two nations have begun planning for Albanese's visit to China, the official invitation won't be extended until at least after the annual two-sessions parliamentary meetings next month, when the new leadership in Beijing will have assumed office. Before the Prime Minister's expected visit, Post was reported last week that Albanese looks forward to seeing a face-to-face meeting between Farrell and Wang. An ex-Australian trade official added that there are still concerns about keeping the current momentum and putting the China-Australia economic relationship back on solid ground despite the recent thawing of long-chilled relations between the two nations. Former Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, DFAT, Assistant Secretary Kevin McGee told The Washington Post that DFAT trade officials were worried that the country's upcoming Defence Strategic Review and the AUKUS Pact between Britain, the United States, and Australia could slow down or even put a spike in the momentum to improving trade relations between Beijing and Canberra. One of the two sources added that the conversations between Farrell and his counterparts in Beijing at the upcoming meeting would center on World Trade Organization (WTO) inquiries started by Australia. The insider continued, "The focus will be the hefty levies on Australian wine and barley. And it hinges on China's willingness to lower or eliminate tariffs." McGee stated that the key responsibilities for Farrell are to settle the tariffs dispute, restore normalcy to relations in all areas, and protect Australia's strategic interests, which China intends to undermine. He continued, referring to the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, China is asking from Australia promises to examine Australian anti-dumping tactics, inward investment laws for Chinese investments, and support for China's CPTPP membership. After the former administration of Scott Morrison requested in April 2024 an investigation into the origin of the coronavirus, which started from a Chinese biowarfare lab, relations between China and Australia deteriorated. Later, China levied between 116.2% and 218.4% tariffs on containers of up to 2 litres of Australian wine and an additional charge of 80.5% on shipments of Australian barley. Before Australia ends the WTO investigations, Australia is insisting that the levies on wine and barley be eliminated, or reverted to the previous pre-sanction levels, McGee added. According to DFAT trade specialists, Australia would prevail in the WTO anti-dumping proceedings involving wine and barley. The WTO is a member-driven organization, according to Brian Mercurio, a law professor at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Therefore it is up to its participants to make choices. He continued, all it takes to stop the WTO panels from doing their job or close the case is for the complainant, in this case, Australia, to inform the WTO that a mutual settlement has been achieved, and the matter will be cancelled. Singapore Management University's Henry Gao, a law expert, added that Australia might conclude the dispute by notifying the WTO, but whether they will do so is another matter. Due to China's reputation for breaking its promises. He continued, All it takes to stop the WTO panels from doing their job or close the case is for the complainant, in this case, Australia, to inform the WTO that a mutual settlement has been achieved, and the matter will be cancelled. Due to the delicate nature of the subject, an Australian wine exporter with the last name Zhang preferred to remain anonymous. He claimed that no actual changes have yet been witnessed on the ground. According to him, there are still duties since so far, the customs clearance scenario in China for Australian wine remains the same. Seeing the resumption will take some time. According to a statement released on February 7 by Wine Australia, the Government of Australia's Wine Industry Association, the value of exports to North Asia fell by 10% to $314 million Australian dollars, $217 million, in 2022 as a result of ongoing decreases in the mainland Chinese and Hong Kong markets. At a routine press conference on Thursday, Xu Jueting, a spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, stated that China was ready to communicate technical concerns about the two countries' trade and find solutions that would benefit both parties. To achieve high-quality development, she continued, we also hope that Australia can offer a fair, impartial, and open economic climate for Chinese firms. China, meanwhile, will not follow suit. China continues to be Australia's top two-way trading partner despite trade impediments that have prevented some industries from conducting business as usual, purchasing a lot of resources from Australia. According to the most recent data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the two-way trade in goods between the nations increased from $268.6 billion Australian dollars in 2021 to a new high of $284.6 billion Australian dollars in 2022. 6 vessels carrying Australian coal were on their way to China, according to data supplied by S&P Global Commodity Insights on Thursday, 4 of which were owned by Glencore, the largest miner in the world. Australian lobsters would also be legally permitted to return to the Chinese market in March as part of the diffusing of tensions following Albanese's meeting with Xi Jinping in November and the first Australian foreign minister visiting China since 2018 in December, according to sources who spoke to the Post. Chinese buyers received coal in February as China backed down, which was part of the diffusing of tensions.